Welcome to Not Your Typical Leadership Coaching, the podcast that builds on conventional wisdom and adds a fresh perspective on this ever-evolving field of coaching.
Are you fed up with advice that doesn't really get to the heart of the matter or really get you?
Whether you're a reluctant or seasoned leader, this podcast is for you.
Embark on a journey of actionable insights, harness untapped potential, and learn to develop a mindset that will transform you permanently.
Not Your Typical Leadership Coaching, where we shatter boundaries and awaken the confident and compassionate leader within.
Welcome to Not Your Typical Leadership Coaching podcast with myself, Martin Kettelhut, and the great IFS coach, Bill Tierney. And I say that because he's been very helpful to me in the past couple of weeks with IFS coaching.
Well, thanks, Marty.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some weeks and some days I feel great about my skill set, my ability, my bandwidth with using the IFS model as a coach. And then there's other weeks that I start getting a little bit lost. And I think what happens, and honestly, this is one of those weeks. I don't know if my clients would tell you, Bill seems a little bit off this week, but I feel like I'm a little bit off this week. And that I'm having to work I'm having to work a little bit harder to sit in my essence as coach, myself, capital S self, as IFS would say, as coach this week. And maybe effort isn't as much the right word as awareness. I need to be a little bit more aware that something's off. And I'll give you an example. Today in one of my groups, I usually don't lean too heavily on exercises and content that I've created in the past and bring into a session, unless it supports whatever it is that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But in this particular group, there's a set of 3 exercises that we began to use 2 or 3 weeks ago. And each of them have been very rich. They're producing wonderful conversations. And in between weeks, I will meet one-on-one with an individual within the group while everyone else witnesses and observes and notices what's happening inside for themselves. Then 2 weeks later, I'll come back to, the next week, then I'll come back to what we previously talked about 2 weeks earlier. So it's a little bit disconnected and disjointed. And I have to kind of really make sure I take good notes and make sure I connect again to those previous sessions and bring my group with me. So all of that was happening today. And to do all that, I needed to have a part of me that's an organizer and a timekeeper. Really that part was working very hard in the session.
Mm-hmm.
I just had this feeling. I just had this sense and this feeling after everybody had done their check-ins that people had a lot of stuff going on. Lots of stuff was going on for a lot of people. This group had 7 people in it. And I was beginning to move in the direction of, well, okay, it's time to do this exercise. And then something kept saying to me, yeah, but no. Can we slow it down a little bit? Because people are talking about some real stuff here.
Mm-hmm.
That let's at least acknowledge it and see what happens when we acknowledge it. So I did that. I said, I just want to slow down. I just want to acknowledge that many of you have a lot of heavy duty stuff going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
And while I didn't hear any specific request for support today, I don't want to just not give you an opportunity to make that request if you have one. We can always go to the exercise if that's what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, it just opened up this wonderful discussion that shifted that energy in me. And I'm really glad I paid attention to that, but felt like like pumping the brakes. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. I don't know how to describe somatically what I was experiencing in my body. I just had a sense of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it just really opened things up. There was connection. And I know that's what we want to talk about today. There was not flow. There wasn't especially disconnection, but I wasn't really aligned with what was happening for my group participants until I acknowledged stuff is going on here. Let's talk about it.
Right. Brilliant. So that seems like a evidence for the fact that you're on the top of your game this week.
I've been aware this week of when I've had parts that are activated.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, and if there's a listener that's listening to me talk about parts in IFS for the first time, it might not make a whole lot of sense. So let me just slow it down a bit. When I talk about parts, I'm talking about subpersonalities, parts of myself that seem to have their own separate agendas. And when those agendas are tethered to an unresolved and incomplete past, that kind of gets in the way of me being able to actually be present and relating to the present moment as it is, rather than as it has been in the past.
And I just for the listeners, I just want to reframe. This isn't just about Bill. This is happening inside every human being.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I speak often about myself and my own parts because I don't know about your parts until you tell me you have them. And then I get an opportunity to engage with them, which is what I do as an IFS coach, is I get permission from my clients to engage with their parts and then interact with them and interact with the client so that we can build a relationship between myself and the client, and between myself and the client's parts, and between the client and their parts. So that we can connect all of that and actually begin to now make some progress towards healing and growth.
So that seems to be where we want to take this conversation. Connection is where healing and growth happen. It's when there's not connection that can't happen.
In fact, I would even take it a little bit further and say it's because of disconnection that we end up with incompletions and an unresolved past. We end up still seeing in the present moment things that look a whole lot like the past.
Right. Parts get created because of that.
In disconnection, that's right. So why don't we start by talking a little bit about what's the difference between connection and disconnection? What causes that disconnection? What needs to be present? What needs to happen for connection to be the experience instead of disconnection?
Okay. What causes disconnection?
What I've noticed is that when there's something that's been put in the space that's inauthentic, there's instant disconnection. Inauthenticity causes instant disconnection. An example of inauthenticity would be a manipulation, a misrepresentation, an exaggeration, a discounting, an ignoring. That's just a few of the examples.
Those are great. Yeah. What let's give a couple of examples, like what the on the ground version of those. So what would be, like, what does that actually sound like in a real relationship?
Let's look at one. A discounting might sound like, let's just say you shared something with me that was maybe a little scary to share with me because it makes you open and vulnerable to my judgment. You're hoping by sharing it with me that you can trust yourself in your judgment or discernment that I'm trustworthy, that I can be with whatever you shared with me without using it to hurt you.
Right.
If my response is something, let's say, that's sarcastic, so I use what you've shared with me to kind of poke at you a little bit.
Yeah.
And I hate to admit this, but I got that in me. I got that in me. And I am so grateful. I just had a client point that out to me yesterday, and I immediately saw it. The shaming part that came in me, so I wouldn't do it anymore. But the moment I acknowledged it and told the client, I absolutely do not intend to do that. That's a part of me that I'll work with and ask to stop doing that. This part wants to try to make you laugh because it doesn't know that what's better is connection. So I apologize for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Awesome. Okay. So you've actually now illustrated all three of those parts. Not only what caused the disconnection, but how to get back connected.
Right. To own it, just own it. And the difficulty with that is that parts will not let me own it sometimes. And I'm not talking about me specifically now, but me, the human beings. Parts will not let us own, because then that would mean we're less than perfect. And if I have a part that's trying to represent that, hey, I've got my stuff together here, I'm good. I've been on this healing path for 41 years. I'm good. My parts don't get activated. I'm always in self. I'm always coming from essence. No, that couldn't be further from the truth. But parts of me really want to represent that I got it. I'm good. I'm Mr. Spiritual. I'm Mr. Healed. Look at me. But when those parts get in there and try to represent, like, that's an exaggeration or a minimization right there. I don't have parts or anything that I might say that would indicate that I don't get activated by parts and I don't struggle with this anymore. Look at me. You can be like me if you do what I do. Any of that is so condescending, so patronizing.
Yeah.
And so it also creates a state of hopelessness. If what Bill is representing is really the truth, if Bill doesn't get activated anymore, if Bill doesn't struggle with parts that get activated, if he's completely resolved from his past, if he's always in self, for me, the client might think, or the person that I'm interacting with might think, I am 5 million miles from that. I will never get there. I'm activated all the time. I struggle constantly. The best I can do is to pretend like I don't. If that's the person, then I've just basically said to them, you're beyond hope. You cannot be helped. If you're that far off the path, like, you cannot be helped. Certainly not the message I want to convey, but parts of me that want you to like me or approve of me might present that I got it all together when in fact I don't.
Well, it sounds like though these sorts of moments where parts get created because of these things you named, the manipulation or ignoring, or the one that happens when we're very young, like, oh, shut up and eat your pudding, or what would you know about this, or those things that just those are inauthenticities too, because they're not recognizing the whole human being that's there. They're reducing a human being to, something that person can't do or doesn't see, or something. It's inauthentic in the sense that it's not recognizing this whole person.
That's right. That's right. Well, and that's always going to come from someone who is seeing themselves as less than whole, perfect, and complete.
Right.
There's something lacking or missing in me, and that makes me feel but I don't notice that there's something lacking. I don't even think there's anything lacking in me, maybe. But what I'm noticing is I'm feeling a discomfort. You're experiencing something real and authentic over there, and that makes me feel uncomfortable because it reminds me of that real and authentic thing in me that I have never come to terms with. Therefore, I have to be sarcastic. I have to discount you. I have to handle you and put you down.
Remember, this was in my senior year in high school. To make a long story short, I showed up one morning with a hickey, but I became the victim. The guys were making fun of me. Oh, Marty's got a hickey. And there was a disconnect from them then, and really later on, my friend Dan told me, well, we were all just jealous. We wanted to get in on the kissing, you had already been kissing some girl and we weren't. So, but in the moment, I just felt like, oh my God, like I have no connection to them. I've lost them now. They're making fun of me. And I became defensive and protective and secretive and all that.
Yeah. So much comes into play here. So in that example that you just gave, you had your experience. They were laughing, making fun of you. What they were experiencing over there was like an envy. They wanted to be able to have the experience that you were having, but the way they expressed the energy that was behind that was to poke fun at you. That landed on a painful place for you, or else it wouldn't have been a problem.
Well, it was inauthentic. What they were actually feeling is envy. What they made me feel was less than, or stupid, or I don't know, something. Like I was disconnected. I was outsidered.
Right. So, I mean, how old are you when in this story? 15, 14, 16 years old, somewhere in there?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So how many 14, 15, 16-year-old kids know how to be authentic in front of their peers? Not too many that I've run across. I certainly wasn't. I had I didn't know how to spell authentic when I was 14 years old. I didn't know what it meant or how to pull it off. And even that, hearing myself say that, how do you pull off authentic is laughable. Pull off authentic. You just show up authentically. Everything else is a performance. And
Well,
that's what I did at that age, 14, 15, 16 years old, as I just performed in life.
There's something very exciting to me and about this recognition that authentic connection is where healing and growth happen.
Yes. Yes.
It seems so simple. Why is it so hard?
Wow. It seems so simple, but why is it hard? In the 12 step, when I was involved in it, there was a placard up on every single room that I went into to have a meeting that pointed to that principle. It just talked about how challenging it can be, but it gets easier if you keep it simple. Keep it really, really simple. Otherwise, it's going to get really, really hard.
So let's move on then, if you don't mind, to how do we get from that moment where, a part is triggered or created to the other side, back to connection and authenticity.
Well, yeah, right. So you're talking about your question involves the evolution of, well, let me talk about these different stages of personal development as I think of them. I believe that we develop as persons. Personal development occurs in this order, although it's not linear. It's not especially chronological. Some of these stages overlap, and some of them last throughout our lifetime. But there is, for example, stage 1 is the experience of being whole, perfect, and complete. It's not a concept. It's not a theory. It's an experience. Each and every one of us were born whole, perfect, and complete, but we don't experience ourselves as whole, perfect, and complete once we get an idea that we're less than that. And that's my definition of shame. Shame is the idea that I'm less than whole, perfect, and complete, that I'm less than who I actually am. Another way to say it would be that there's something wrong with me.
Yep.
The moment I get that idea and attach to it, the moment that idea gets traction inside of me, I now have an identity for the first time.
And it ain't a good one.
I call that stage of personal development loss of self. And the self in that title is the self that IFS talks about as who we truly authentically are. That whole perfect and completeness of who we are. The loss of that, the loss of the experience of whole, perfect, and complete introduces an identity that I refer to as the shame identity.
The tragedy of this, though, is that I didn't know that I just got an identity and it's attached to being, called stupid, let's say.
And believing it.
But I don't have I don't know that I actually am whole and complete. I just have this identity as imperfect.
I would equate the experience of whole, perfect, and complete as innocence. We lose our innocence the moment that we begin to think of ourselves as the one, as the cause of the pain or discomfort that we're now experiencing, that is ushered in with the idea that we're less than whole, perfect, and complete. So something happens and it hurts. Something happens and it scares me.
This is we don't need to go into this, but maybe a footnote. This is what the Adam and Eve story is all about in the Garden of Eden. Loss of innocence.
Yeah, that's right. Loss of purity, loss of wholeness.
Paradise.
Yeah. Gone. And it's all about perception. All about perception. The same paradise that existed 5 seconds ago still exists, but we're not aware of it because we now have blinders on, and those blinders are the shame identity. I see myself as less than whole, perfect, and complete. Therefore, everything I see outside of myself has changed. The colors are darker and duller. Nothing is the same anymore.
Give me a fig leaf.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Oh my God, you've got a penis.
Okay, that's stage one.
Stage one is perfection. Stage two is loss of self, which involves the formation of the shame identity and then necessarily the formation of the false identity. I cannot let my shame identity hang out there and be seen by the entire world. I've got to cover it up. I've got to hide it. I got to control what other people think of me, and that so that they don't think what I think of me.
Mm-hmm.
If others thought of me the way I'm now thinking about myself, now that I know that I'm not whole, perfect, and complete, and there's something wrong with me,
I'd rather be dead. I'd rather be dead, right?
Exactly. Well, and for young children, they will be dead, they think. Like my caretakers now think less of me than I did. Now I think less of me than I did.
Yeah.
Maybe they do, maybe they don't think less of me. But the fact is something hurt, something scared me, something was painful, and I now am shaming myself. I'm believing I'm less than whole, perfect, and complete. So stage one, perfection. Stage two, loss of self. And because now I'm operating in life as if I'm someone that I should be ashamed of, and pretending to be somebody in life that I can be proud of, so that and hoping that the world buys my act. I spend years. Most of us spend years and years and years developing the act, the performance, putting on the show, and convincing ourselves that we have to try to be our best selves. And we have to hide our worst selves. That is very confusing. The more effort we put into that, the further away we get from our true selves.
Yeah, what we're calling our best self there is not authentic.
It's our false identity. It's polished. It's pretty. It's glamorous.
Or it helps us get by.
Yeah. If I'm stupid, you might see me showing up as real smart. If I believe that I'm stupid, I might compensate with I'm really smart. By the way, that's an inauthenticity that people sense. We sense it in each other, but we can't put our finger on it. What's going on with that guy?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel real. He's always got the answer. He's always there to help me. He's always being so nice. He's always, or she's, blah, blah, blah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, so we sense it. And because we sense it, we're cautious around it. And because we're cautious around it, now there's a disconnection.
Yeah.
Human beings can smell inauthenticity like a dog can smell a bone from 500 miles away.
At the same time, though, we get immune to it, or I'm not sure if that's the right word, but like we're swimming in it in a lot of our relationships and a lot of our things we read and TV. It's just none of it is authentic.
It's conditioning. It's what we have come to accept as that. Well, this is reality. This is just the way things are.
Yeah.
I was talking.
So is there a path back to, well, we haven't done 3 and 4 yet, but do we get back to 1 at some point?
We can. Yeah, that's the goal. That's the entire goal. And so once we've lost self, we need to experience a period where we begin to stabilize. If you think about like a domestic abuse situation where a woman is being abused by a man, it can go the other way around, I know, but let's just say there's an abusive situation where one of the caretakers is abusive and the other is being abused and then can't even care for the kids. The law might come in and step in and say, we need to separate this couple. Let's protect the victim here. That's the kids, and often it's the woman. And so by separating them and making sure that the violence ends, the woman now begins to stabilize, and so do the kids. Their lives begin to stabilize if they've got the proper resources to support them. Well, that's an example of every kind of stabilization that we need to experience. It's an extreme example, but if I see myself as stupid and I hang around with people who reinforce that and with humiliating comments and sarcastic and ridicule and that sort of thing, then I've got to get to a point of stabilization. And for me, that happened when I got sober at the age of 27 years old. And that continued before my next stage happened 20 years later. And that next stage is awakening. when I begin to become awake and aware of some of reality. And then healing begins. That's the next stage, when, because of there's been enough stabilization and awareness and awakening, that I can begin to heal. Once I begin to heal, now growth and development can happen. And with enough growth and development and healing, I can return to the experience of whole, perfect, and complete.
Yeah. We have moments of it probably. I mean, I think I do, like it's not all solved, but there are moments where you just feel like, I'm okay. The world is fine.
Yeah. We do get glimpses of that. And then when we try to chase it, when we try to, my wife was telling me that she went to the Van Gogh, what do they call it? The Van Gogh show, the display.
The one that's been going around the world, that
Yeah.
it's sort of sound around and everything.
Right. I've seen, I've not gone myself, but she said that she was in Seattle here a couple of years ago. When she was there, she went, and she said for just this brief moment, she was in this moment, this state of awe. And then she realized she was standing in someone's way. As soon as she realized that, she lost the awe. She moved out of their way and waited for them to be finished having the experience, and then moved back into the space that she was in, making sure that nobody was around her that she might bother, and waited for the awe, and it didn't return. She couldn't get it back. I think we have moments like that.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
That's that flow state that we can get back into when all of our defenses and all of our act, we forget that we forget to act, we forget to perform, and we find ourselves in an authentic state.
Well, and this is part of what I think the work of coaching, and maybe therapy too, I'm not sure, is all about, is getting us, what are the tools that get us back there?
Yeah. Are you asking me?
Yeah. I can also answer the question, but like, just like top of the list are things, simple things like telling the person with whom you were inauthentic that you were. And introducing your authentic self to, like, look, that was really manipulative of me. I'm so sorry. Who I really am for you is commitment to your health and welfare, or something like that, right? Or love or admiration, right? That's a very simple way to restore in a relationship, is say how you were inauthentic.
And that can't happen unless you can see it. So how do you see what you didn't see? That is such a challenge. It can be, especially at first.
Yeah. Well, I'm just ad-libbing from personal experience. I know when it's not me. I've already spat it out, but I'm looking at my own communication going, look, it doesn't sit well with me. Sometimes I couldn't articulate it in the moment. Oh, I was being inauthentic. I just know that doesn't work for me.
A lot of times in those situations like what you're describing right now, my first impulse is to say, ugh, look how you made me feel. Look what you did to me to make me feel this way.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I reacted that way, but if you hadn't done this, then I wouldn't have. That's not what we're talking about here. That's actually what blocks awareness of my own, it's more inauthenticity. Blaming is a gross example of inauthenticity and disconnection. Truth is, I'm having this experience over here. No matter what you might have done to poke it or prod it or activate it, it was in me, and it came out because of the situation. So if I can start with the premise that what I experience is my responsibility, no matter what seemed to activate or trigger this experience that I'm having. How I'm perceiving it, it's what I think of what's happening here that's making me feel the way that I feel. And I may not like you very much in the moment because you were the one that provided the activation and got this thing going in me. In my second marriage, I'd be watching the Seahawks In my mind, here was the deal. I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan, so go ahead and feel sorry for me. But in those days, back in the 90s, if I said I was a Seattle Seahawks fan, of course you would feel sorry for me. We never won. We never had a winning season. It was horrible. And yet, I did all that in my mind, I did all that I did for the family and for my wife in exchange for 3 hours on Sunday when I could, 6 months out of the year when I could watch the Seahawks lose. And so
Did they know that this was the agreement?
that's no.
Okay.
No. So I would plop myself on the couch, turn on the TV between 1 and 4 on Sundays. I'm going to watch the Seahawks. And anybody comes and wants my attention for anything for 5 minutes, I'm angry. And the angry that I'm feeling in between 1 and 4 on Sundays is either because the Seahawks just messed up again, or because somebody walked into the room and wanted my attention and didn't keep the agreement that I forgot to tell them that we had.
Mhm.
But in my mind, it was all their fault. I wouldn't have felt that way if they hadn't walked into the room and made another demand for me, given I've given them every other minute of my week up until now. It was all up here. It was all according to my perception, my meaning making, and my own manual about the way life should go.
Mhm. Mhm.
Fortunately, I was able to recognize that. But at that time, it was very difficult to see it. My mind went to, I feel bad and it's your fault. You got to change.
Yeah.
True healing happens when I recognize, not just pretend, not just follow the formula because somebody told me to do it, but when I really get that I'm feeling upset because there's something in me that needs to be healed. You just happen to be activating it. You just show up and poke it for me.
I lived under the impression that my dad didn't trust me with money. Didn't think I could make enough of it. Didn't think I was wise about how I spent it. When I was living in, this is a number of years ago, I wanted to show that I have mastered money, right? So I invited my parents to meet me at my timeshare on the Big Island, right? This will prove I've made it money-wise. We were out to eat, and I was coming from showing them, so I was ordering appetizer and bottle of wine, and being real generous is what I thought. Well, my dad was sitting over there scared to death, like, I'm not gonna be able to pay for that. He's my dad. He always paid for everybody's dinner. And he was scared out of his gourd, and he got really upset with me, reached in his pocket, he pulled out $100 bill and threw it on the table and left the restaurant.
Wow.
Right. And so we didn't make up that night, but I wrote him a letter and put it on his bedstand, so that he would see it first thing when he woke up in the morning. Basically, in the letter, I said, look, I realized I was just showing off, and I didn't realize that you thought that you were going to have to pay for this. And, none of that is, how I really feel about you. And I'm glad that you came and all that stuff. And in the morning, he got up and he hobbled out of the room, and he came right over and he just hugged me. He didn't even say anything. We were connected again.
Wow. That's a powerful story. That landed hard when you shared that just now. Wow. What a great story. Great illustration of the power of connection, the power of authenticity. We need connection. When we talk about ruptures in relationships, when a relationship is ruptured, what's happened is there's been disconnection. And usually, and I'll go back to Byron Katie here, usually that disconnection happens because of a misunderstanding too. A misunderstanding may not be an intentional inauthenticity,
Right.
but nevertheless, it's an inauthenticity. And misunderstanding simply means that your experience of this situation that you and I shared together is dramatically different than my experience of it, my understanding of it, your understanding of it. They don't match. They're misaligned. And because they're misaligned, we are disconnected. And when we can come back together and say, what was your experience over there? Here's my experience. Something was off. I felt this disconnection and I want to be connected again. Can I understand? Can you help me to understand
Right.
what your experience, what your reaction to me was all about? And are you open to hearing and understanding what my reaction was all about? Can we talk about this in such a way where we're not trying to offload our stuff on each other?
Right. Exactly. That's tricky because I've seen people try, like, I witnessed a conversation recently, where the husband was trying to be transformed. He got that there was something that he had done it and he didn't know what it was. And so he asked his wife, well, what did you think? And it was just the energy was just a little off. She took it as a further dig when what he was really trying to do was just get an understanding of her perspective. In that case, it was just a little too fast, a little too energetic, and she thought it was just more of the same instead of
criticism.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
did you think as a criticism rather than what did you think? Help me to understand what you were thinking.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
Huge difference.
Right. There's an awesome book, and you and I talked about this before, and on a much earlier episode, we were talking about Susan Campbell on Getting Real, and she breaks this down beautifully. She talks and gives great examples, and we even talked through one of those examples before. So Getting Real by Susan Campbell, highly recommend that. But really, for me, the vehicle that I have found. Let me back it up a little bit. I said I was going to say something about Byron Katie. Byron Katie says that forgiveness is recognizing that what you thought happened didn't. I love that. When two people can get together to forgive each other, essentially what they're doing is saying, this is what I thought what happened. The person is saying, well, this is what I thought happened. Now can we get to the truth? What actually happened? And usually what I thought happened because I'm looking through the lens of an unresolved past.
That's right.
So if we can get to what actually happened here, and usually when that becomes clear, hearts crack open, that connection's made again, and whatever damage has been healed.
Usually, I'm in the midst of a relationship issue right now with a friend where when the truth was revealed, he chose to continue to hold a grudge. I thought, I see what I did, and I see why he reacted. I said, here's what, but it didn't transform our relationship. He's still angry at me.
What he thought happened is what happened for him.
Exactly.
He doesn't yet know what actually happened.
Even though it's been pointed out.
Right.
It's been discussed. It's been disclosed.
And what would prevent that? I know the story. I know what happened. And prior to you seeing what you saw, you didn't see it. And
That's right.
as long as you didn't see it, then you had to forgive. There was a forgiveness needed from you for him.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're saying he just doesn't, even though it might have been said, he's still looking at it through a lens such that he can't see that yet.
Right. Remember earlier when I was talking about how paradise turns duller. The colors lose their luster. We don't see things as they are anymore because our perception is distorted by an unresolved past. I guarantee that whoever this friend of yours, is being blocked in his view. His view is being distorted by an unresolved past. How you talked, how you treated him, what you said, whatever happened, reminded him of a past that still hasn't been healed. And until that gets addressed for him, he probably won't be able to see you for your true heart.
That's right.
Got to work both ways. I can't be the only one authentically revealing myself if the other person over here is using that to fuel and make themselves right about what they thought about me. And that's so painful. So painful.
It's very painful. I keep trying to move on from this because I'm like, okay, he's not coming into the truth with me. He's got something from the past that's holding that filter over his ability to see. And I love him. So I think I just need to move on because I can't make him have that realization.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. My codependency tendencies would have me chasing him.
Mm-hmm.
In the situation that you're describing, and I've done this so much in the past, one of the
Yeah.
most challenging and yet the most healthy things I can do is to let go of someone that cannot see what's true and insist that who they hold me as,
Yeah.
in whatever way that is, in their disdainful way or their critical way or their shaming way, who they see me as is who I am. They will,
Right.
are attached to it. They won't let it go, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Thank goodness there's 7 billion other people on the planet.
8, last I heard, is closer to 8.
Oh, sorry. Right. We're getting
There's
up there.
plenty to choose from, for sure. And
So anything that you want to, say to just round off our conversation for today?
well, you know what? Not once have we talked about leadership, and this is not your typical leadership coaching. So let's just acknowledge how this has anything to do with leadership.
Yeah. Well, I think it has everything to do with it myself. I talk about this in the last part of my book because our energies are constant. We're like bees in a hive. We're running into each other's energy all the time. If you can get yourself cleared, you're helping people. You're leading to a more peaceful world. And by being in these sorts of communications for, returning to authenticity and connection, you're leading the world in that direction.
And not everybody's going to follow.
And not everybody's going to follow.
Gino Wickman, in his brilliant book Traction, says one of the principles within traction is the right butt in the right seat.
Right, exactly.
If you've got an organization, and we all do, we all are leading our own organizations, and we have people within those organizations that want to be a part of that. Mm-hmm. Then there's other people that find themselves in our organizations that don't want to be a part of it and only want to change the organization because they don't want to leave. Sometimes we just have to let them go. They're in their own butts in their own seats.
Right. And that's why there's no traction.
Exactly. And and more specifically, no connection. Where there's no connection, there can be no traction.
Right. That's the car's wheels have to be on the ground or it can't get traction.
That's right. Great conversation. Wow, how fun was this?
It was, and it always goes so fast. Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you, Marty. And till the next episode of Not Your Typical Leadership Coaching. We'll talk to you then.
Bye.
Bye.
That concludes another episode of Not Your Typical Leadership Coaching. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insights to fuel your leadership journey. Remember, true leadership is not about you. It's about empowering others. Take your insights to heart and cultivate a leadership mindset that will transform you from within. Thank you for joining us on this quest to leadership excellence. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes where we delve deeper into the art of leadership. Until next time, remember that you have the power to lead with confidence and compassion from the inside out.